Yes, my people, welcome back to another episode of Where's My Podcast. And today we got something a bit different. As all of you probably would have seen, there's been some big news in the world of fashion recently. Our guy Pharrell Williams has been announced as the Creative Director for Menswear at Louis Vuitton. Obviously, it's a big topic and I want to talk about it, but I didn't want to do it myself. So I thought, let me hit up my guy, Michael Takkou, fashion guy. He's in the fashion world, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself. He told me to introduce him as a general. What was it? Mischief maker. Yeah. So Michael, the mischief maker. But Mike, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, man. But so just give them a little update on who you are and whatnot. Why you have something to say on the conversation, and then we'll get straight into it. Really,
I've been working within sort of different realms of the fashion industry in London for years, whether it be through retail with boutiques, through buy-in. Mentoring young brands, young designers. Yeah, just bits and bobs. Yeah, just have my fingers in a few pies.
Do you know what, Mike? It's interesting because remember when I bumped into you at IO's event the other day, and I was like to you, yeah, Mike, we've got this part of the pod that we're launching where we just want to have more laid back conversations. And I kept saying to you, like, I'm just waiting for the right moment to come. Then obviously the Pharrell thing came, and obviously I did my little post on Where's My TV and that. Then I'm just seeing things and whatnot. Then I clicked your story. And more time, when it comes to people's stories, I'll just click through, but I see you had bare words on there. So I said, cool, let me read it.
That was like a stream of consciousness.
Stream of consciousness. And I'm reading. And you were saying, you kind of summarized for me in a really good way, the sort of other sentiments that we heard after Pharrell got announced. But I feel like you gave both sides of it. You said why it's a good thing, why some may see it as a quote unquote bad thing, but you also gave the realism of it in it. So I just thought, let's get you on the podcast and let's basically speak about that. So what I'm going to do is, Mike, I'm going to start off by reading what your post was, if you don't mind. Don't worry, Mike, I'm not going to try to do your accent or not. No. So, thoughts on skateboard P at LV. Yes, he's always been a cool and stylish man. Yes, he has experience via his own brands that he launched alongside Nigo. Yes, I assume he has an understanding of luxury product to some degree. Do LV need to stop the hiring of hype non-designers? Yes. Is it another marketing ploy for a quick cash grab from a market the bourgeoisie often looked down upon? Yes. Do I feel LV should have pivoted their design direction? Yes. Should they have employed an actual designer who knows how to draft a pattern and cut? Yes. Should Will Ye begin a barrage of tweets and posts?
He's been quiet, you know.
He's been quiet,
kick off, but
yes. Does he have relevance amongst the young consumer that LV are trying to target? No, it's not the noughties. Give designers a chance to actually design. Can this era of the creative director end already? As they don't create, they just direct the real creators. Wow. So first of all, before we break it down, because that's what I want to do, I want us to break down each part of it. But what made you think to, because obviously you have your opinions, but it's not every opinion that we voice. So what made you want to share this?
I think in general, you know, I studied design many years ago. Do you know what I mean? So in that aspect, I've still got that purist.
I didn't even know that, by the way.
Mindset. Yeah, a long time ago. So I love design, and I think, you know, when you're trained, I know people say you don't have to be trained, whatever else, to be a creative director, whatever, but you have a different element to it. I mean, you have that understanding. So particularly for big houses, like Louis Vuitton's probably the biggest luxury house in the world, you know, LVMH as a whole. And they got the LVMH prize, for example, always supporting young brands, young designers, this, that, the other. They got this whole pool of young talent, but they don't pull no one from there. I mean, what Virgil done was out the blue, he smashed it, and personally I think leave that as his legacy and don't try and carry on from where he left off. Do you know what I mean? Go different.
So that explains one part of the cool. I'm gonna park this bit off in my head, then I'm gonna go straight into this, yeah? So, yes, he's always been a cool and stylish man. So, yeah, what have you liked about Pharrell's style? And if you could just give us a brief history in terms of what Pharrell has kind of added to fashion in that sense.
He's just cool, man. He come out the womb cool. He's just smooth.
Kind of like you.
Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know about that. Like, he's just cool, man. I think musically, do you know what I mean? You know, when I was younger, I used to love NERD, what he and the Neptunes done for music. sonically, stylistically. You know, he's one of the pioneers that changed the way hip hop dressed, the same way Kanye did.
Facts.
Do you know what I mean? The Neptunes, I think at one point they had like 10 tunes in the top 20.
Damn.
Just all produced by them, or that, you know, incredible. You know, was very much like a Japanophile. So he'll pick up, you know, he introduced sort of the Western world to a Bathing Ape. Do you know what I mean? And he just always had a very eclectic sort of style, the way he puts things together. Do you know what I mean? It's not very cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Like he dresses like this, or it's streetwear. It's just emergence of everything. So he's very much an individual in his personal style, and I think you can see that from his music to the way he puts pieces together.
100%. Obviously, Mike, I kind of know this stuff from being older and then looking back, whereas you were kind of living it and whatnot. When Pharrell was kind of doing his thing at that point in like the early noughties and whatnot, did you see that reflecting how people around you were dressing and stuff?
I think you saw that kicking off. Do you know what I mean? Everyone it's a different cultures. Do you know what I mean? He come from a skateboarding background, this, that, the other. So he had that little skater aesthetic, but twisted up. Do you know what I mean? So I think you definitely saw that coming up when Baby Ape was getting more prominent. The noise, you know, the colours, the way people put things together. He definitely had an impact. Do you know what I mean? Stylistically on people. I remember everyone going mad for the NERD trucker hats, which had the brain logo on it. So in that moment, he definitely had a huge impact on sort of youth culture. Do you know what I mean? From streetwear onwards, he was just a fly guy.
That's the bottom line, isn't it?
Just fly.
Fly. Okay, cool. I like that. Cool. Yes, he has experience via his own brands that he launched alongside Nigo. Do you know what's interesting, yeah? I remember growing up and I knew about Bape, but I didn't really know about Nigo, I can't lie to you. And I didn't really know that Pharrell was even involved with it like that. I just knew about Billionaires, Boys Club and whatnot. So what's like the history of Pharrell's affiliation with Nigo? And
it's a bit mad, I think, because Pharrell went to Japan, saw Bathing Ape, fell in love with the Garms. But then Nigo was just basically loved Pharrell's jewellery. So I think Jacob the jeweler was making all Pharrell's stuff at the time. Then Nigo would go to Jacob and basically say, I want that chain. I want the same as him. So it was that they both influenced each other.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? So I think from there, they launched Ice Cream, which was like the footwear first. I think it was tied in with Reebok, producing it. And then Billionaires Boys Club is like them two together, you know, launching what is technically Pharrell's brand. Do you know what I mean? It had similarities to a Bathing Ape. Do you know what I mean? With pastel colours, this, that, the other. So I think they've just always been great collaborators, you know, and they sort of respect each other's aesthetics and understanding.
Yeah, they definitely had a mutual admiration for each other and whatnot. Would you say that those two, I don't want to say those two kind of birthed the luxury streetwear market, but would you say those two were kind of like pioneers of it in a sense?
Definitely so. I think if you think of a Bathing Ape, I think just Japan in general. You know, a lot of the Japanese streetwear brands, you know, you had another one called Mastermind. Expensive, bro. Like, do you know what I mean? Some jeans were like £800, but before Mike Amiri even knew what jeans were. Do you know what I mean? But Nigo, all them guys, Hiroshi, you know, all that early 90s era Japanese streetwear brands. And I think, you know, the price point that you're looking at, you know, you wouldn't really see a hoodie going for $2-3 bills before. Do you know what I mean? So at that point, streetwear, but at a higher price
Premium price, yeah. So what, do you remember seeing these in like stockists in the UK and whatnot when you were growing up?
Specific stores will pick them up. So it was still very niche. You'll go to certain shops like, I think it was Good Hood back in the day. Selfridges might have had a little something or other. But I think more time it was people that were travelling because it wasn't so prominent. I remember a friend of mine, I went to uni and his brother was in Japan and he brought him back like an Adidas Bathing Ape t-shirt. This was like 2001 where you got the three stripes going through the ape sort of logo, and I was like, huh?
Seen nothing like that before, innit?
But it's just very, very niche. You couldn't really get it over here. You know, it's like when you're younger, friends will go to New York or whatever. You're like, oh, bring me some crepes over because you can't get them over here. So it was that thing, and then it slowly started to build up. And of course, through Pharrell and through other hip hop acts of that era, Bape just blew.
Just blew up. Yeah. I see when I was watching that Fredication video, I see that bloody B.I.G. had worn it. Do Do you know what's mad though, Mike? And I like having these conversations with you because obviously you're from a different generation to mine and whatnot. It's like, unless we do our research, sometimes we feel like as though things kind of started with us. Because I remember being in secondary school and the man would just wear Bape and that. Even when we went to uni, it's like a lot of the forward boys and that would have their camouflage Bape hoodies.
But that was a resurgence though, do you know what I mean? Because Bape had its moment, then sort of dipped away a little bit. And then you guys, your generation, do you know what I mean, started bringing it back.
What do you think caused that though?
I think just swings and roundabouts. It could be anything. I think now they might have seen an artist wearing it again or bringing it back, and it just seemed fresh to a younger, new audience, basically. Do you know what I mean? It's not tired. People discover it like, okay, that's cold.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And just start bringing it back. You know, it's very, you can tell a Bape piece, whether it be the shark hoodies, the camo, do you know what I mean? Or the trainers collaborations they used to do as well. So it's very distinctive.
Yeah. And do you know what? Obviously, Mike, you probably would have noticed, but we're going to go on loads of tangents throughout this conversation, yeah? But speaking on the point of Japanese streetwear, what do you think it is about Japanese streetwear that makes it so, like, unique in a sense?
It's just the vision. I think, you know, Japan was very influenced by Americana, right? So they'll take American tropes, varsity jackets, hoodies, sportswear, denim, but they'll just make it better. Like, you know, just the attention to detail, the cuts, the silhouettes, you know, they created streetwear. Streetwear as we know it today, it was birthed in Japan. They were the masters of it. Do you know what I mean? But they'll take elements, like you have more the workwear thing, where you look at someone like Junya Watanabe, for instance, is like very Americana workwear sort of stuff. Can be considered streetwear. Workwear has sort of merged into sort of streetwear circles now. You had Bathing Ape, you had Hiroshi Fujiwara, who's Fragment Design. You know, it's collabed. You have Double Taps, Mastermind, just so many brands. And they're all found their own little pocket. Do you know what I mean? What they specialised in it, and they stuck to their vision. They're just incredible. And then there's so many. Speaking
of you basically mentioned like the Japanese kind of made it better. That basically brings me back to Pharrell on a point, because you know when it comes to Pharrell, people talk about his taste level being so much. It's hard because obviously all this stuff is subjective and whatnot, but people talk about Pharrell having the taste level that other rappers just didn't have.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned, didn't I, as well? Do you know what I mean? It's like he's got an understanding of luxury products.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's definitely got a high taste level. He's been afforded to, you know, he's had that mergence of, like I said, he's a bit of a Japanophile. He loves all that sort of Japanese pop cultural stuff. But it's just, again, his individual, the way he put things together.
Different.
The way he puts outfits together. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't think that. Yeah. It just works. And the thing with him, he carries it so well. I mean, clothes are secondary. Do you know what I mean? It's just the way he carries himself with it. It's just too cool, man.
Big up Pharrell. Big up Pharrell. So going on, he spoke about his brands and that. This one's interesting as well, because he was like, yes, I assume he has an understanding of luxury product to some degree. So what did you mean by that then?
As a consumer, you know, the guy, he knows luxury goods. You know, he wears a lot of luxury goods, whether it be streetwear, whether it be high-end brands. You know, he understands what luxury pieces mean, like the Tiffany glasses that he done. You know, the jewelry that he's made. He understands these things. He's got a clear understanding about metals, about stones, about materials. You know, I think he's definitely knowledgeable on that fact. Do you know what I mean? He's very clear about what he likes and his own direction. But definitely more so from a consumer point of view, you know, he understands product. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I was sort of saying there is he understands what luxury product should be.
So when you said to some degree, because you look at it like he has that understanding on more of a consumer side rather than like a maker side, a creator side, if you want to put it like
just
that.
Looking at his history of what he's made before with his brand Human Race, do you know what I mean, with Adidas, with BBC, Ice Cream. You know, it's elevated streetwear, should we say? But wouldn't say it's luxury.
It's not couture.
No, it's not. It's not high end. You know, he's still using cottons and whatever else. It's not super rich materials. It's a different level.
And considering that you mentioned it here, do you think that's something that could potentially limit him in this role?
No, because you're working for Louis Vuitton. Man, you've got the best teams, the best ateliers. You've got everything that you can ask for. So, your dream you can have an idea, and you've got capable people there to bring it to life. So he's got all the resources there. And I think, he's a very intelligent man. Very intelligent man. So I don't think he's going in blind.
He's aware of all this stuff
and
already.
I think once you got those resources from LVMH, from Louis Vuitton there, you can run with it.
Yeah.
I mean, look what Virgil done. Some of the stuff he created was incredible. Some of the materials, some of this. And I was never a huge fan of Virgil. I said this before. And I think there was that one collection, I think it was Autumn Winter 20, where he had Mos Def in it. He had Goldie in the show, like the video. That for me really tilted it for me. And I was like, okay, now I see
what you're trying to do.
Your vision, yeah. But before I found it a little bit derivative or whatever. But that I was like, okay, now I get it.
Do you know what, Mike? It's interesting because even though you put everything you've put, like I can definitely see that you're still a proponent of Pharrell having this role, because even the things we've discussed so far, he has a higher taste level. His influence in terms of just style, but not only style, but music in that sense. So everything Pharrell kind of does, he's successful in it.
Yeah, he's a cultural behemoth. Do you know what I mean? The guy is, everything that he's touched so far
turns to gold.
Exactly, it's flawless. So I don't think it'll be a bad, don't think he'll do a bad collection. I think I'm intrigued and I'm interested to see what he brings out with the team there as well. But like I said before, I think it's still going to be in probably the same lane, kind of. That's what Louis Vuitton want as Virgil, and that's why I said just let Virgil's work sit as its own entity, and that's why I put in the post as well, like just change style direction.
So before we get onto that bit, because it's nice that the conversation's having a bit of a lineage, yeah. Why do you think LV are, because I obviously have my own perceptions, naturally it must come down to the bottom line. Would you say that's the reason that LV are staying on this Virgil luxury streetwear type direction then?
To some degree, but if you think about who started it, it was Kim Jones. When Kim Jones was at Louis Vuitton before Virgil came in. And don't forget, Virgil and Ye used to come to London and sleeping on Kim Jones's sofa. Kim was doing collabs with, again, Fragment, with different artists. Of course, he done the Louis Vuitton Supreme collab, which just blew up. So he was like the first guy that started the whole luxury streetwear proponent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And of course, Virgil was the successor afterwards, and he done that thing where Virgil wasn't purely street, but if you think of what was selling from LV under Virg, it was all varsity jackets, sneakers, tees, the more sort of streetwear, should we say, attire, rather than the tailoring. Do you know what I mean? Coats, etc., etc. So it's an interesting one, I think, and I think the way LVMH are moving now, they're hiring big names. It's almost like, the Ye family tree, where you had Virgil go to Louis Vuitton, you had Matthew Williams go to Givenchy, who also does Alix as well, and
got Heron Preston doing his own thing as well.
Got Heron. I mean, look, LVMH, they funded Rihanna's label, which closed. Do you know what I mean? So they've been trying to tap into a new demographic. Do you know what I mean? Like I was mentioning about the market employees and whatever else. They're just trying to tap into the black consumer. Because they found there's a new market there for them, people that are willing to spend. So that's, Bernard Arnault's a businessman. He's just like, I just need to, the bottom line is what counts.
That's all that matters, yeah. And speaking of that then, Mike, not to say why is that a bad thing, but do you feel like that sort of marketing ploy is having an effect on LV's output from like a design perspective, if you want to put it that way?
No, not particularly. I think LV, they've always been known for their bags, right? Bags and luggage. I think the first time they ever done clothing was when they hired Marc Jacobs in the late 90s. That was the first clothing collections they ever done.
That's crazy to think that wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So they're always known for their bags. They're always going to sell their bags. That's what the consumer will always go for. I don't think it's bad because they've never had a distinct style. Like, you know what I mean? Without the monogram, you can't look at it and say, oh, that's LV.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With certain brands, certain houses, they got their specific sort of aesthetic and style. You know what they're doing with LV. It just chops and changes with the designers that's there. So it's not like a consistent thoroughfare. So that's why I don't think it's mad for them to pivot and do something slightly different and sort of veer away. But, you know, what Virgil done was super successful for them.
So it makes sense.
Exactly, carry it on.
Continue it. So speaking of that then, why do you think LV need to stop the hiring of hype non-designers then?
Because it's just that. It's just hype. It's great marketing. You know, you get a big name. They come with their own following already, ready-made following, cult following that they have. And that's going to draw people to the brand. Do you know what I mean? Rather than, I'm not saying he's definitely a creative, but why not go into your design teams, give someone a chance, give a young designer to create their vision for it. Give them something new. If you're these proponents of, you know, young talent with the LVMH prize, whatever. You know what I mean? You don't need to just keep getting big names to come in and overlook. I think he's going to be the artistic director, so he's going to be overlooking different aspects of it. But I just think, you know, just when people talk about sort of Nepo babies and all this sort of thing.
I think this is like a version of it type thing.
Not really, but it's like you don't need to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's like with Pharrell, you know, you're a multi-millionaire, incredibly successful in whatever you've done. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to go to a big house. Like, it just, for me, it's unnecessary.
It's almost like vanity to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's like I'm doing this, doing that, which, you know, I think there's so many talented people out there. So many talented young designers, this, that, the other, that they're grafting away tirelessly, but then they're thinking, when will I get this opportunity? If all these brands are just going to be hiring a big name here or another celebrity there or whatever else, like what's the point? We will never get that chance to, you know, house one of the big houses. But I think it's purely an LVMH thing. You know, if you look at the Kering group to some degree, they're not really going for celeb type designers. Do you know what I mean? It's more LVMH that are sort of pulling those strings, getting those people in.
And why do you think LVMH are doing that? The others aren't.
It depends. I think with LVMH, that's found their little pocket. Do you know what I mean? So like, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that. It generates clicks, it generates sales. You know, people like what we're doing now. We're talking about it.
True.
Do you know what I mean? If they just pulled out someone that worked in the design team
It's no
and said, this person's there, you know, not everyone's going to be like Alessandro Michele at Gucci, where you just pluck him from the design team and you put him at the head. You know, again, it's just talk. It's free marketing for them as well.
So, do you know what's interesting about what you said as well, Mike? Yeah. So let me just unlock my phone so I can see the thing. You know how you mentioned that Pharrell, obviously he brings his fan base kind of with him.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you made that point now, because you also made the point about he's not as relevant now as he was in the 90s and whatnot.
Yeah.
So how much of how much culture do you think he brings with him in that sense?
Well, you know, you've been a younger generation. What do you know of Pharrell? And
That's a great question.
do people care about Pharrell? In like, what do people think of Pharrell as a younger generation?
That's such a good question, you know. I'm trying to think even what I think about Pharrell. All I think is that he's fly. But it's mad though, Mike, because even though I'm only 26, I feel like if I spoke to a 20-year-old, not to say they won't even know who Pharrell is, they might just be like...
You might just associate the trainers.
Yeah, exactly. The human races or something like that. Whereas obviously there's a bigger gap between us, but we've felt Pharrell more than other generations. Yeah. So I didn't even know how much of the Gen Zs, if you want to call it that, he's actually gonna... That are actually going to be interested in this because it's him.
That's what I'm saying. What cultural relevance does he have in 2023? Because, you know, in terms of his music, do people even know his tunes? Do they even know who the Neptunes were? Do they know who NERD was? I mean, it's just, he hasn't got that, you know, maybe people that are slightly older will gravitate towards it and be like, okay, always been a fan, I dig it. But for a younger audience, I don't think he's got that relevance there. Not the same way that Virgil had, or like Ye has, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Relevance globally. You know, with a strong sort of cult following from what they do. I don't think he's got the youth there, Pharrell, which is what I think LV are trying to tap into, is again the youth market.
So do you think, so if they're trying to do that, then why Pharrell then? Do you get what I mean? Because arguably he's not the right choice if we're looking at it from that perspective.
I think because he's been working with the brands, you know, he done that thing with Tiffany. Tiffany are owned by LVMH. You know, trying to do little elements there. But I'm sure, like I said, he's an incredibly, they look at him as an intelligent man, stylish man, has an aesthetic. You know, he's branched out into other products, whether it be skincare, you know, his streetwear lines, this, that, the other. So they've seen something in him. And I don't think he's going to do a terrible job. But
could it have been someone else?
Exactly.
I get it. Do you know what? Speaking of that, could it have been someone else point, yeah? I watched a really interesting video. You've heard of Reggie Casual, innit?
Yeah.
Yeah, his stuff's sick, by the way, yeah. So I just stumbled across this video, typed in Pharrell on YouTube, his video came up. And he acknowledged at the beginning of the video that he is a super Pharrell.
Yeah, he's a fanboy.
Fanboy of Pharrell, yeah. So he was like, yeah, everything I'm saying, yeah, maybe biased, but this is what he genuinely thinks. So if we look at Pharrell's history or whatever, arguably Pharrell's known for putting people on type thing.
Yeah.
Music-wise, Clips is the perfect example, telling Pusha T to rap and them going on to be some of the most successful rappers of their age and even till now and whatnot. And then from a fashion perspective, obviously Nigo was bigger in Japan. He's basically who made Bake popular here, and then it came a Billionaire Boys Club and whatnot. So he was speaking, I don't know if you watched this video, but he was speaking about obviously the Kids Super Louis Vuitton collab and whatnot. How do you pronounce his name? Colm Delane.
Yeah.
Such an interesting name, innit? Yeah. Colm Delane.
Colm the way Steven spells that one.
Yeah, you know, it's like, I never know how to say it. But he was basically saying that he believes that Pharrell had a hand in that. So he's looking at it like, cool. As much as people think Pharrell is gonna come and just be like this, I don't know, the overarching rule of everything, and the collections are kind of gonna come through him. He thinks that LV are using Pharrell because they believe that he's the perfect person to do like smaller collabs with different sort of designers on all their collections.
He's an artistic director, so he's directing the art of it, the shows, the concepts, the ideas. You know, he's just putting, like I said before, you know, he's putting the creators that are creating together, but he's giving them the brief, should we say. Do you know what I mean? Even with Kid Super, I think his designs in that show were probably less than 20%. You know, they're even saying a lot of the stuff was probably passed over from Virg.
Is it?
But Combe only had like a handful of pieces that he did, design for that collection. It's a bit of a mess for me, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it looked sick.
Some bits are great, the staging was great. Some pieces were fantastic, do you know, which was sort of taken from his thing. Like I love the jacket with a collage, which was Virgil's face.
Yeah, it was wavy.
I mean, super incredible. Then the other bits with the newspapers and hats. And
a bit too much.
It was show. It was for show. I mean, I think maybe Louis Vuitton should have just gone on that way. And do like Gaultier's doing for his couture. And just get a guest designer every season to do something.
So that's potentially, that's what Reggie Casual says he thinks LV are going to do with Pharrell, because Pharrell, if anyone can do it, Pharrell can do it type thing. So I think that would be sick.
But I think, yeah, it'll be cool. I think even, again, LVMH brands like Dior, whatever, they're all doing collabs. Like Kim Jones at Dior every season is collaborating with an artist or this or that or whatever else. Do you know what I mean? I think, again, with Virg, we've done the Nikes for Louis Vuitton and the Air Force. You know, again, groundbreaking sort of cultural thing, you know, because it's tapping into the street and the most sort of classic shoe.
Yep.
Some people say it's the best shoe ever. Do you know what I mean? But I think Pharrell, he's got that pull. You know, so I think he's definitely going to have the resources and he's definitely going to be able to pull people in. But if he's pulling people in, I want him to give them their flowers as well and give them their shine, not just everyone think it's just Pharrell doing it. So if he brings someone in, a young designer to assist or whatever else, let it be known.
Make sure they're front and centre as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because people think that, obviously, we haven't even mentioned, but You know how, okay, this will be a good point to speak about. You know how before you were talking about them giving younger designers a chance, not necessarily lesser known designers, but designers.
Young brands, yeah.
So what sort of names were people saying that you feel like should have been involved in the conversation?
I think the main names that were sort of thrown around was Martine Rose, Grace Wells-Bonner, Samuel Ross, Telfar Clemens. So just looking at those, that's 4 young black designers, which in itself is incredible.
It's mad. 3 of them British.
Exactly. Which just shows how much talent we got in the UK. Of course, everyone knows Samuel was mentored by Virg. He's doing his own thing. You know, he's collabing left, right, and centre with all sorts.
I see a Hublot collab not too long ago.
Yeah, done Hublot. I think he's doing one with the fragrance, Aqua de Parma.
Yeah, sick.
As well. Martine, you know, I think Martine's come to prominence when it became common knowledge that she's the one that helped them create that sort of Balenciaga silhouette. Grace is just makes beautiful clothes. I love her whole aesthetic. It's very poetic, it's very beautiful, but it's very strong, you know, all tapping into West Indian roots that she has. I think Martine is very London, very London subculture, so I get...
You must love Martine, though, and you.
Do you know what? I get what she's doing, and I really like it because I can get all the references. I get her references through and through. But when people are asking, should Martine have got the role? She's an incredible designer. I don't think, like I said, because she's so, all her references are so London, so subcultural, London, this, that, the other tribes. I don't know how that could then translate to a brand like Louis Vuitton.
A global.
Exactly. I mean, because she's so insular in what she does. I mean, she can cut. She's got a great, great vision. But I don't know how she could then translate that, because with Virgil it was tapping into sort of, again, more Americana, which people are used to. But to have such a niche view, which she does, how to then transfer that to a huge brand like LV. I've been interested to see what she would have done. It's probably gone completely different. But yeah, I think I would personally like to see Grace.
Why?
Again, like I was saying before, about them pivoting the aesthetic. I think Grace, she's got that luxurious, what I like to call silent luxury.
What do you mean by that?
It's not showy, it's not loud, you're not screaming with logos and brands and this, that, the other. You know what I mean? Her stuff is about the wearer. You know, you put something of hers on, it's a beautiful cut, it's a beautiful fabric, it's about how you feel in the garments. And I think she has that. I think she would have done quite well under LV, pivoting the direction slightly, still having a strong narrative as well. But then saying that, I thought she would have been great at Gucci as well. But I think I would have really liked Grace. I think she would have had something different to say. And I think she's got that bit more of a worldly reference points and influences.
Hers is more palatable to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's a different thing. It's a different vibe. Sam, again, very intelligent young man, you know, hyper intelligent, very intellectual. I think the job might have been a bit too big for him.
For now.
You know, because with the Cold War we see what he does, but I don't know what he'll be able to bring to the Louis Vuitton table. And then when it comes to Telfar Clemens, no one wears his garms.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's funny you said that, because I was going to ask, why was his name in the running? Like, no disrespect to him in that.
No idea. No one wears his garms. It's just a bag. He's had a great hit with the bag. So for me, it was no need to even be in the conversation. You know, but I think it's great for England to have 3 British designers in the runnings for it, and all 3 black British designers.
Speaking of that, Mike, what do you think it is about black British designers that makes them this, I don't know, you can call it commercially viable in that sense, or just why is it that 3 black British designers were touted to take over from Virgil?
Well, first of all, I like to say because of their talent, first and foremost. And I think, you know, Virgil broke down that door. You know, it was the first black designer to helm a luxury house, a global luxury house. You know, so when people talk about the democratization of fashion, you know, about this, it's online, blah, blah, but I think in that aspect, he truly democratized it. Like I was saying before, like the bourgeoisie
Yeah.
are trying to tap into a market. You know, don't forget, people are racist, bro.
Bottom line.
So all them old school bourgeoisie Parisian houses are like, I don't want this type of person wearing it. I don't want this type of person, you know, wearing our brand. But Virgil smashed down that door, opened it up to a complete new world, a complete new audience. And at the end of the day, you know, the audience that he attracted to, that was attracted to his work, again, artists, performers, this, that, the other, basketball players, global reach. So people are seeing that, and it's aspirational. So they're looking up to, like, okay, I want that, I want that. And it made it okay for, you know, working class kids, man, from Rhodes to go into a Louis Vuitton shop and feel comfortable. Not to go in there and feel uncomfortable and the sales associates looking you up and down. And do you know what I mean? So I think in that sense, he really democratized it and opened up the doors. And I think that's probably one of his greatest legacies, I think, you know.
100%. And speaking of that again, so from like, this is more from like a cynical standpoint. As much as you said, yeah, it's about their talent. One can't deny the talents of Martine, Grace and Sam and whatnot. But do you think like people at LV are thinking the fact that Virgil was black is part of the reason why he was so successful in the role, and because of that, we're just going to get...
Probably. Because they've got a new market that he brought with him. But I think because he had such a cult following before with Off-White, part of the Kanye family tree, should we say, do you know what I mean? He had a huge global following. So that, I think that's what LV were looking for as well. Martine, she's very much a fashion person's designer, do you know what I mean? She has her own little community, but it's not a global thing. Wales, even less. You know, with Sam.
Maybe a bit more.
Yeah, a bit more. I think, you know, the Americans love him off as well because of his ties also with Virg. So I think they're also looking for someone that can bring an audience with them. Of some kind, where I think that those guys, they got their own followers in their own community, should we say, but they haven't got that global reach.
Do you know what's so interesting about that, Mac? Yeah, because, you know, this, as the saying goes, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And if we look at commercialization of fashion, if you want to call it that, naturally it seems as though this is going to be the path. Not necessarily every luxury fashion house is eventually going to be like, you know what, for bottom line reasons, we're going to have to take this. But like, can you see a time when LV are going to go for the niche designer that is just known within fashion rather than the fashionable person that's known or more of like a pop culture type vibe?
Not for Louis Vuitton.
Okay.
You know, that's the golden egg in the LVMH sort of stable of brands. Do you know what I mean? I think with them, they won't take a punt. I mean, even the designs I had before, like Marc Jacobs, they took a risk with Marc, but that was in '97 when it wasn't what it is today.
Yeah.
You know, then you have, like, at the moment, you've got Nicolas Esquier, who does the women's wear, who was at Balenciaga for years. You know, so they've tapped into incredible design talent, but I think now they've found their little thing, you know, let's hire these names, let's get them in, let's push it that way. And for LV, I think it'll be, unless something drastic happens, I truly don't believe that they'll pluck a young designer and give them that opportunity. You know, now they had that gamble with Virgil and it clearly paid off. I don't think they'll go and pluck someone from obscurity, should we say, and give them that huge platform.
Yeah. And obviously, as you're saying, that can be disheartening to the young up-and-coming designer from wherever they're from that wants to, that's the pinnacle of their aspiration to take on that role.
Or any big design house, do you know what I mean? But like we said, Louis Vuitton is probably the biggest luxury brand in the world.
Yeah.
Up there with Hermes and Chanel, whatever. You know, they're the three biggest luxury houses, should we say. But it just, maybe they're thinking, what am I doing all this work for?
Yeah.
You know, of course, the design studios are full of incredible talent. You know, and you don't see that, you know, the artistic director ain't sitting down sketching, I think.
What is the artistic director doing then?
Like I said, I think they just give the concept, they'll have an idea, a theme, a concept, a vision, and they basically set a brief, should we say. You know, so in the design team, you have different people, like people, the coats, say, outerwear team, designing just outerwear. People just doing trousers, people just doing shirts. It's all different little teams there. And I think they'll just go for design and he'll just check it off.
Simple.
But these are elements that I want. These are the colors that we're going to be using, you know, and the design is actually design. And they're the ones that, you know, never get...
They're flowers.
Yeah, exactly, get a looking. They're the ones actually making the clothes, they're designing the clothes. They're the ones putting it together. So this whole creative director, artistic director thing is basically just checking things off. I mean, just okay and stuff. Yeah, okay, cool, I like that, done. You know, but they're creating the, like I said, they're directing it, they're pulling everything together and creating the overall vision.
And speaking of this year, Mike, again, going back to the point we made about not seeing LV ever changing that, now that they found their golden goose, as you called it, yeah. How do up and coming designers kind of mitigate that? Because my whole thing is, from, let's say, a streetwear standpoint, I'm a proponent of, because of the day we live in now, the digital era is so important for up and coming designers to build their personal brand as well. So is that one of the ways you feel like up and coming designers can kind of hopefully have more of a chance to get to a position at LV? Or is there any other ways you can think of them?
Oh,
them
no,
kind
without a doubt, you know, you've got to build your community, you know, and particularly now it's because of social media, you know, you need to have talent and also your product has to be good. Do you know what I mean? But then you need to build that community. I think it's becoming more of a personality thing as well. So before the designer was just this person that will pop out their head at the end of the show, have a little wave and go back. But now people want to know everything about day-to-day life, what they're doing behind the scenes. So you have to be a personality. You have to have, again, your own personal brand and build your own sort of hardcore sort of community there for whatever reason, whether it be for your design work, whether it be for your personality. So you need to have that ready-made audience, you know. But first and last is the product. You're designing, so you've got to have design pieces which are strong, that resonate with the audience, and are creative, because that's what it is. You're a fashion designer. You know, you're not a celebrity. You know, but through that, you know, like we look at younger brands in the UK, Cortez, for example, guys like that, you know, they've created this incredible community around them. You know, kids are going mad, and the product's cool. You know, you can be the most engaging person on social media, but if your product's dead, business is finished. So it's I think with that, you don't have to aim for the big houses like Louis Vuitton and whatever else, you know. So many brands out there, you know, that you can gain valuable experience from. But I think it's better just to work with smaller brands because you're more hands-on. You learn a lot more, and that will really benefit you if you decide you want to launch your own thing. You know, so it's always better to learn from the ground up. Of course, when you go into these big design houses, the pressure's on. It's such a fast-paced environment as well. You know, sleepless nights, particularly when it comes closer to showtime. You know, and then it's done in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, however long the runway show is. Do you know what I mean? So, of course, it's great to have those aspirations, but make your own path.
Facts. And speaking of those aspirations, Mike, yeah, has it always been a thing where people have kind of wanted to ascend to those super high, biggest house positions? Or is it something that's more synonymous with like my generation because of, I don't know, I just feel like with my generation and beneath, like, I don't know if we have that hustle. You get what I'm saying? We often think things can happen overnight, and not necessarily things are easy, but not everyone's willing to kind of put that work in and think long term. So
Patience. It's a lack of patience. I think people see other people that are successful, and they feel, oh, they've just popped, and blown out of nowhere, but they don't see all the graft that was put in beforehand. People have been doing it for years and years and years and years and years, and then they're having their moment. Like even Martine. Martine's been doing designs for years, bro, and then she was literally, I think it was 2015 or so, she didn't have enough money to make a collection.
She did the one
look.
Yeah.
So she's been putting the work in. Do you know what I mean? Now she's sort of getting recognition. And I think it's great that it became common knowledge that she was the force behind the Balenciaga menswear at first, because that opened her up to a new audience. Exactly.
That's what
people
made them
more aware of her as well, and then that brought more attention to her own line.
And I suppose hearing that stuff, Matt, kind of shows why you're so passionate about this because with a lot of with the names we mentioned, like, you know the backstory and you've seen the work that they've put in. So the fact that the biggest luxury house, LV, is giving those positions to people who haven't necessarily put that level of work in within fashion, it's like, yeah.
With the industry, but I mean, it's just the way the world is now. I think everyone sort of wants a big name signing. Do you know what I mean? Like I was saying before, they want a big name there so they can bring what they feel they can, their ready-made audience. You know, but why not give a younger designer the opportunity? Because they can create a new audience for you. They'll bring whoever they got their small communities with them, but then from there, people are still going to look at LV because it's a huge brand. So no matter what you're pumping out, and I'm sure even the clothing is a minute percentage of what makes the money. Their money is leather goods. You know, the shows are just there to do shows and have a ready-to-wear line. Do you know what I mean? But it'll be interesting to see what he does in terms of leather goods, Pharrell, though. But then as I'm saying, with Virtue doing experimental bags, playing on the monogram, but I'd like to see a different voice, a different viewpoint, something fresh, something energetic. You know, let someone come with a completely different opinion, give them free rein, give them carte blanche to do what they want with all the resources that you have, because then their creativity will blow even more. Because they're so creative with limited resources that they have for their own brands. Imagine what they could create
biggest
with
fashion machine behind them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so that's exciting. That's what I'll find exciting. That's what I think give them the opportunity to really, really show what they can do. Because they're so creative with the limited amount that they have. What they can do with all the resources of Louis Vuitton will be immense.
And speaking of that stuff also, Mike, because throughout the conversation you'll be mentioning like a new direction. So what does a new direction look for LV look like to you then, or something that you can't even really imagine it really? Because as you were saying before, LV don't have that quote unquote like set look.
You know, I think we look at what Virgil's doing. I really liked a lot of his tailoring pieces that he was doing, the coats. He was very playful. You know, his whole thing was about childlike imagination when he was at Louis Vuitton. Do you know what I mean? It was very, very fun, very playful, very light, nothing too serious. You know, and that was his whole sort of concept for his work at Louis Vuitton. And it's great. It worked for him. That was his thing. But I want to see a little bit of innovation, you know, and do something completely different with them. I want to see stuff without the monogram on it. I don't want to see another jacket with Louis Vuitton splattered across the back. Give the house a new house code. Give it a new signature. Do you know what I mean? Refresh it. But of course, that's not going to be so commercially viable straight away. Because when you're looking at aspirational brands, you know, you come into a bit of money. You want to get the thing which shouts.
You need the LV.
The
bags.
The bag. You want the hat, the scarf, or whatever. You know, something with the branding on there to say, you know, I've got a luxury.
When we was in school, all the men would get the belts.
That's it. So belts or the hat and the scarf, the checkered damier print. But I think, you know, it'd be interesting to get someone in there and really tweak it, really change up, because particularly for the shows, you're still going to go to the store, you're still going to have all the classic pieces anyway. But when it comes to the runway shows, be super creative, change it up a little bit, change the style. Of course, you're still going to have elements in there, but have a new vision for it and create a whole new universe. The way Virg created his own universe for LV, someone to create their own one, their own bubble. You know, if you look at some of the greatest, for me, designers and showmen, you know, like Alexander McQueen, John Galliano, when he was at Dior. You know, it's a different era, but they put on a spectacle. You know, and it was so incredible clothing, incredible showcase, you know, and everything had a concept, everything had reasoning behind it.
Do you think we see less of that in fashion today? Why?
Fashion is just a commodity, man. It's commercial, so you have to put things out there that will make you money. You can still do your creative bits, but you know that things that are like your bread and water, They're the things that you always need to have in that collection to sell all the time and commercially viable. But then it's a generational thing, man. You're never going to get not every day you're going to have a Galliano, not every day you're going to have a McQueen.
They're like generational talents.
Exactly. You know,
Messi's and Ronaldo type thing.
Exactly. I mean, but now I think where fashion's become such a commercial commodity across the board, luxury fashion or not, you know, fashion in general, culturally, everyone wants to be involved in fashion, whether it be their interest in clothing or they want to have some sort of work within the industry. You know, it's become like the cool thing to work within, you know, but then I always ask people like, why? Why do you want to work in fashion? Why do you want to do it? Do you know what I mean? I think that's what I want to see from designers, like when they're starting a brand. It's like, what is your purpose to start this brand? What do you want? What is your vision? What do you want to create? You know, what do you have to say that is different from X, Y, Z? You know, because if you're going to bring something to the table, you've got to bring something new. Because we don't want another million brands with just logo T-shirts and logo hoodies. Yeah, it's a great way to start on some level, but how do you differentiate yourself?
And when you've asked people those sort of questions, Mike, obviously being the position you've been in, being a buyer and whatnot, like, have you ever had conversations with people and you thought, not, it would sound mad to say you're in the wrong business, but you're not doing it for the right reasons?
There's been a few. There's been a few. You just look at it, and some people just want to jump in and out. You know, some people might want to do something, they might have a hit little product. They'll sell it out and they'll rinse it until the wheels fall off, and then they've got nothing else to back it up. Do you know what I mean? And they don't know how to develop it or how to change it up, so they will start to fizzle out. You know, and there's some people which are great at universe building and got their own thing. Again, going back to Martine, we look at someone like Rick Owens, for example. You know, we look at the likes of Ray Kawakubo, Comme des Garçons, Yoji, you know, the old school greats.
Yeah.
They built their own universe. Do you know what I mean? Whether it be the aesthetics, the cuts, the silhouettes, everything. You know, and some people just don't have it. They just, it's generic. You know, you can look at some collections and you can see the same piece in 4 or 5 different collections. It's not, yeah, people say, oh, not everything's been designed, everything's been done. A lot has been done, but it's how are you putting your twist on it? Again, what differentiates your piece? Denim jacket, for example. How are you going to make that different? To really stand out amongst the sea of
Denim jackets.
Exactly.
Yeah. From a modern perspective, because you mentioned obviously the universe, the designers that have been able to build universes, and I agree with all those names you said. Like, who have you seen that's kind of doing that now?
I think even the guys that we mentioned, if we go back to Martine, she's created her own little universe, and although her sort of aesthetic has, people have tried to tap into it and been more maybe commercialised via Balenciaga. I think Grace has her own universe, she creates her own thing. Labrum, London as well.
Yeah.
He's doing incredible work.
He is. Did he show yesterday at Fashion Week? Or was it today? I think it might be today, actually.
Today.
Okay.
You know, but a lot, again, I'm going back to young British designers. Do you know what I mean? Look at someone like Nicholas Daly, you know, very much thing. Bianca Saunders. I think she's a great talent. I thought she would have been an interesting fit for Louis Vuitton if she was up there.
But do you think her name wasn't mentioned as much because maybe it's a bit too early? Or?
Yeah, she's still relatively a young brand, young designer, but I like her take on tailoring, where she utilises draping, which you normally find in women's wear, but incorporating into menswear, clean. You know, again, she's another one that's using a lot of
West Indian
references from their heritage. Do you know what I mean? Which is great. You know, she has collections called Hard Food and stuff like that. So it's wonderful. You know, and I think just building up on that, and she's definitely got a clear aesthetic. I think they all do. You know, Grace, they're building their own worlds.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you can start seeing things even just from the silhouette or the cut. You can tell, okay, that's a piece from them. Or You know, that they're starting to build on their little signatures,
Yeah.
their signifiers, and that's the key part. You know, keeping that thread going for each collection. Not every collection being completely different, so people don't know exactly what are you trying to build here. You know, they're taking the building blocks and developing it.
Yeah, so it's basically about having those small kind of design motifs that kind of run through everything. So people, when they see something without a logo, they know it's yours type thing.
Like Craig Green as well, for example, another incredible talent. Incredible talent. You know, I would say he's one of those, has that same energy as the earlier sort of fashion showman. Do you know what I mean? And it's emotional. He makes you feel something when you watch his shows. And I think that's what it has to resonate, not just visually, but fashion is always great when it makes you feel something inside, like great art.
Or great music. Yeah,
Great music, exactly. Yeah. You know, if it makes you feel something, then you're onto a winner.
Onto something. Do you know what's interesting, Mike? Yeah, like everything we've spoken about, I think one thing from my perspective, I think designers may struggle with, and what I may struggle with, for example, if I decided to start a brand, is kind of discovering what you think is not necessarily unique to you, but I don't know, things that you're passionate about, and then how you can kind of translate it into a brand. So Martine is obviously her garage sort of days or whatnot that kind of builds the building blocks of her design aesthetic, if you want to put it that. Then you've got Bianca Saunders and Grace, who's more like their West Indian heritage and their ideas about masculinity and whatnot. For like new designers, how do you kind of find out what's your thing? Because I feel like that's what most people might struggle with.
I think as a creative, it's just one of those things which you try to know, but you know what drives you, right? And if you're going into that field and you have a creative mindset, you know, you do a bit of soul searching, but you find what represents you. Because at the end of the day, a lot of collections, when I was doing design, studied years ago, everything was tied somehow to me personally. Like something that I went through, some personal story, something that I wanted to say. So it's all something that has to come from your soul, really. I mean, something that resonates with you on a deep level, and how you want to put that out there, whether it be through little nuances of design or reference points or this, that, the other. You know, it has to be you. It has to be you, and only you can know that. Do you know what I mean? It's great to look at others and get ideas from here and there. Of course, everyone does that. That's how you learn, that's how you develop, that's how you go on. But it has to be something that you got from inside of you, and it has to be a personal thing. Do you know what I mean? In many ways, I think people design or are great artists, whether it be musicians, traditional artists, whatever. It's almost like a form of therapy.
Yeah.
Or you're literally giving a bit of yourself out there. You know, and that's what it is. So you have to know yourself, understand your vision, what you are about, and then project that
into whatever medium it is,
exactly.
Whether it's music, whether it's fashion, whether it's art, whatever it is. It's so interesting, Matt, because I totally agree with that, yeah? So I'm also a very firm believer in there's so much value in authenticity. But what I think one of the issues is with like my generation, if you want to call it that, and generations below, a lot of people believe that they have to almost fake it until you make it, because maybe they see people in certain positions and they hear that for example, let's use music, for example, yeah? Rappers, a lot of the rappers we hear today or whatever, a lot of them really weren't from certain things. Whereas in your day and age, if we was looking at British rappers or American rappers, they're rapping what they lived.
Yeah.
Do you get it? And they ended up being successful from rapping their truth. But younger people today are seeing, I don't know, commercialized artists who are rapping lies and thinking, you know what, I don't have to be authentic anymore. I can just make up a facade and that's what's going to make me famous.
Because that's what's working. You look at something, this works. This is the sort of ingredients, do you know what I mean? This is the blueprint of how to get successful, so I'm going to jump on that. So some artists might start that way, and then they'll start to veer off. So it's a great way just to get noticed. You know, this is what's popping at the moment, I'm going to start doing this. Again, but it's not authentic, and I think as a creative, I don't know how you can feel all right with that inside of yourself, because you're not being truly you. But I think it's the same with fashion design. It's, you know, it's popular culture. Like what is happening right now? What's part of the cultural zeitgeist of the moment? And that's what people are easy to gravitate towards now. You know, if we look at Instagram, the way influencers operate, this, that, the other. Yeah, fake it till you make it, because the industry is full of blaggers. Full of blaggers. I'll tell you, I come across people in some roles and I'm like, how
did you get it?
Yeah, it's like, what? And it's really like head scratching. It's like, no. You know, so some people just can chat. Chat the most amount of breeze and it works for them. Do you know what I mean? But again, there's different avenues. There's no right way or wrong way to go about it. Do you know what I mean? If you want to sit there and you want something to pop, you know, you can jump on whatever's hot at the moment, do that just to make a
Get
name.
the eyes on you.
Exactly, but what do you do afterwards? How do you maintain that?
Do you think people don't even think that far? Most people don't, do they?
I think, you know, we're going back to what Andy Warhol said years ago. It's like everyone wants their 15 minutes of fame.
True.
You know, and it's easier to do it now. I mean, with all the social channels, it'd be TikTok, it'd be Instagram, it'd be this, it'd be that. You know what I mean? Longevity is the key. Do you know what I mean? So I think you got to have that plan. When you're starting out a business or career or whatever it is, you got to have that plan. Like, this is my starting point, this is my end goal. And how do I get from A to B? How do I get there? You've got to plot it out. Or if you just want a short-term thing, you can come up with something quite viral, this, that, the other, it pops, you milk it for as long as you can, and then done.
Then retire to Spain.
Yeah, but then also you're like tied to that one specific thing though afterwards. So if you try and do another project, you're always going to be tied to that little moment. So it's patience is key, man. So I'm saying, put the work in. No one wants to work anymore. So people don't want to graft. You know, I come across that with some people, and they're like, oh, I want to be doing this. I'm like, you have to do the dirt first. And by digging in the dirt, that's where you learn more about the soil. You know what I mean?
And
you know
the soil yourself? Is the soil the work?
The soil, yeah, it's the work, but it's also yourself. And understanding, so you're working the earth, should we say, right? Do you know what I mean? Then from there, then you can start planting seeds. Then things start to bloom and grow. So, but no one wants to do the ground level work. Everyone wants to be up there straight away. But by starting on entry level, be inquisitive, ask, and you probably get there in less time than other people. You could move quick, but you just have to soak it all up, and you have to do this because that's where knowledge comes from. You know, and I think you'll be more respect in the industry, particularly for people that might be working under you, because you've done that. You've been in their shoes. Do you know what I mean? You have an understanding, and they'll respect that thing, and also can look up to people and be like, okay, this person started, say, on the shop floor, and now they're one of the design directors or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Buying directors, whatever you want to call it. You know, so you got to do the groundwork.
Facts.
That's across the board in anything, just in life.
Not just in fashion, just
no, in anything, man. You got to do the groundwork. You know, you got to do the groundwork. You're going to have the ups, the downs, but then that's how you learn. You have to do it. You can't just sort of jump in and all of a sudden you want to be the biggest thing since whatever. Do you know what I mean? It don't work like that. Everyone's come from somewhere.
I knew that our conversation was going to become like this, you know, because every time me and you talk, we can talk for hours. We can end up speaking about, you know what I'm saying? We can speak about football in 10 minutes or something. But obviously, with your expertise and whatnot, I'm happy that the conversation naturally transcended into this stuff, because these are the things that, as much as we're having a more topical conversation speaking about Pharrell, there's more elements attached to it than just him being appointed. It's obviously why and what him being appointed means for other designers and whatnot. So yeah, I knew the conversation was going to be like this. And I wanted to ask Mike, obviously, again, going back to what you were saying about it's looking for that longevity. From your perspective as not only being a fashion consumer, but working within fashion and working close with like up and coming brands and stuff, what is it other than like authenticity that you think gives those brands longevity?
I think it's the support they get. So a lot of young designers, they don't get the support they need, particularly in the UK. There's like no funding, there's no help, and it's a struggle. Do you know what I mean?
To get funding, you need to win the LVMH prize.
Yeah, or something mad, you know, but there's no support for young creators, particularly with the going that we've got now, just cutting money away from all the arts as well, you know, which is a huge, huge part of the UK. And it's having support, and I think it's just about giving people chances. Again, you know, like for instance, I'm working with a company, Machine. They're renowned for, you know, stocking sort of new graduate designers and really pushing new young talent. And I think without places like that to stock those brands, no one's willing to take a punt on it. Do you know what I mean? Bigger department stores or whatever, they're not going to go and grab a new graduate designer. They're waiting until someone's a bit more hype or they've got something around them, and then they'll put it in there, you know, for it to sell bottom line. But you need to support. And without that support, all these great creators will just dwindle away because it's tough and they're not making much money. They're grafting away. They need that support. They need those platforms. And I think only then can they grow. Do you know, because at the end of the day, they need to sell for them to be able to create a new collection, to develop, to keep going. So I think it's always supported, man. And again, it's the way trends and fashion move so fast now. You have to, like we were saying before, you have to have that. Once you've got that core community, that core audience following you, then you can build on that. If you don't, I mean, you could be there one moment and then forgotten the next. You know, so it's just perseverance, support from retailers, support from editorials, from editors in magazines. You know, support young talent. They're the next. They're coming within you. They're coming with something else. You know, otherwise we're just going to have a sea of sort of disenfranchised, lost creatives that have just fallen out of love with what they do because there's no opportunity there. They're not being supported to do these things. They're going to keep falling back on big names to come to a big house. This, that, the other. Do you know what I mean? And just feel like, what am I doing it for? I mean, you can only do things for love for so long.
It's got to start paying the bills.
Has to get paid, yeah.
So, thanks for that, Michael. No, thank you, because I feel like a lot of the young designers that may be listening to this conversation, they're going to need to hear things like that. And speaking for the ones that are listening right now, what sort of platforms or, like, I don't know, initiatives do you know of where designers could potentially get funding or expertise or even like business advice? Like, do you know any?
There's not much, really. I think you can always sit there and have like little sort of financial advice. I think the key thing is knowing how to deal with your finances, right? And knowing how to deal with it. There's some great people that do like production management. You know, you've got to know about factories, sampling, this, that, the other. One guy, Mike Key, he's great. He's worked with a lot of young brands as well. You know, he's fantastic, super knowledgeable guy. I think he's done a few brands with like some mutuals like Sanjeev, Ronin, Picante, quite a few more well-known brands as well. I mean, he's fantastic. I think people like that, he's always open, just tap into him. But it's really understand, like, this is the budget, this is what I want to do, but don't be afraid. You can start, like we're saying again, start your community. You can start selling direct to consumer through your own website, through Instagram. Start creating that following. And then if you want to get into stores, do your research of what store it is. That's one thing I can say. It's like, look at the brands those stores stock. Do you think that your brand aesthetically, or whatever, will fit in with that store's vision? You know, because I can't tell you the amount of times that I'll get so many things sent from brands, and they're great.
It just don't work for.
It just doesn't fit in with what they're doing. So do your research, and when you do it, hit it out and say, right, here's 5 stores. I know my brand will fit in there, and these are the people I want to outreach to. Even go in there old school with some stuff in a bag and just say, can I just show you some bits? As well as sending you emails, sending you lookbooks, etc., etc. And it's just keep, you know, be very direct about what you do. You know, rather than trying to spread yourself too thin, you're going to get all the knockbacks. Be like, okay, I know that this store stocks XYZ brand. My brand will fit perfectly with them, within their direction, within their aesthetic vision of the store and everything that they stock there. Those are the key things. But again, now, DTC, man, make up a little website, sell things off your Instagram. That's how you market it. Build your community that way. And of course, you'll start getting some traction, and you know, keen buyers will catch on to it.
You know what, Mike? Yeah, I could just end up the episode there. But Ras, how long have we been recording for? Okay, calm. So let me just ask one more question, well, a couple more questions. Speaking of community, because community is a running theme that I feel like we have through all our conversations, whether it's speaking to stylists, buyers, designers, build a community, build a community, build a community. How do you know when you actually have a community? Because, and the reason I say that is because even one of the last episodes we shot, big up my guy Josh, he's got a brand called Swamp, sick brand, yeah. He was basically saying how when he first started, he was doing like the influencer thing, innit?
Yeah.
So he had a couple thousand followers. And his first order was 50 hoodies because he thought he could flog that easily because he said he had 3,000 followers, innit? So he had convinced himself that because of the amount of followers he had, he could get rid of that light work. But he said that he sold one hoodie and the next hoodie didn't sell for 4 months. And to this point, when we was last with him, he said he had to give all the hoodies to charity 4 months ago. And that means he had those 50 hoodies for years.
But what was he influencing for? What was he known for?
It was fashion. So that's what made him think, okay, people look at me as a fashionable person. I've just started my brand. So naturally, people are going to buy my stuff. But like, yeah, so how do you know when you actually have a community and not just an audience?
I think that's a good question. I think the audience is always there. That's what you're going to generate through online anyway. And I think even for himself, he shouldn't have made the hoodies in the first place. Unless people are reaching out and asking. So it's about listening to your audience. This is the community. If they're reaching and saying, you know, we'd love you to do this, and just get a feel for it. I think with the community, it comes in different ways, whether it be the audience or the person that you want to sell to, that will be your consumer in the community, but also the community around you. You know, who are you working with? You know, if you've got friends like photographers, a stylist, this, that, the other, all the videographers, all these people are part of your personal community as well. Then you have the brand's community, should we say. You know, the audience that you're outreaching to, that you're trying to touch, that you want to sort of sell product to. But it's about listening to your audience. You know, because if you might be the fashion guy on Insta, whatever, you know, influencing, where people reaching out to you to say, why don't you design your own stuff? Or did he just decide, I can just make a hoodie and sell it because people will buy it? Do you know what I mean? It's like if people are asking for that and then you've got such a strong aesthetic and you're able to produce something, then I think people would buy into it, you know, because they're buying into you. You know, personally, you know, got like, again, young guys like Kofi, Icy Kof, you know, does the What Are You Wearing videos, sort of blew up on that, you know, he's got his line.
He's got Bonwi?
Bonwi, yeah. You know, so he's doing great. I think someone like Sanjeev, so people that have come from that realm of, you know, content creator, doing their own lines as well, because they've got a very strong identity, very strong aesthetic, and they built that audience. But because people they've listened to the audience and they're saying, why don't you do this? We would love, if you made your own XYZ item, we would buy it. Do you know what I mean? So it's developing from there rather than it just being like merch based, should we say. I mean, like these guys, they do like one piece, whether it be a coat or a hoodie or something like that, which is incredible, and that just flies. And then from there, just build up.
Simple.
Yeah, just keep building it. You got to, whatever money you make from that, you got to put into the next project. That's the only way you can develop it.
Let's keep going from there. Mike, thank you.
Thank you, my man.
One more question though, because obviously we're meant to be speaking about Pharrell. We did speak about Pharrell.
Yeah,
we spoke about Pharrell. So I was just gonna say, if you could just sum up what you're expecting from Pharrell as the creative director of LV, I think that would be the best way for us to finish the conversation.
I am expecting elements of his own personal style. I think it'll be more of the way his personal style is a bit sort of mishmash, like putting random bits together, creating something quite interesting. You'll probably see a lot of faux furs and stuff. Do you know, I want to see him in the clothing. It'll be completely different. I want it to be completely different to what Virgil's output was. Is what I think it might even be a bit more mature, a bit more grown up, a bit more cleaner.
Because that's really Pharrell.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So I think I'd like to see that. I think a little bit more mature, a bit more clothing for adults rather than things that are a little bit too juvenile, should we say. and playful, which were great. I wouldn't say Virgil's work was juvenile, but it was very playful. It was always about that childlike imagination. That's what his whole thing was. But I think for us, I want to see some slick, clean pieces with nice little twists. I mean, when you're like, you know, I want to see that. I want to see something new. So I was saying, to pivot a little bit, I want him to implement himself and his own personal taste into that.
I think he will.
I think so. I think he'll be very successful. And I'm very intrigued to see what he's going to do. And I don't think we're not going to see it till
June.
Yeah.
After this conversation, I'm mad excited for it now.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna hit you up as soon as we see it, and then we can discuss how we think it went.
No, because Pharrell's just too drippy, man.
Oh, mate.
Do you know what I mean? So,
man.
But you know, like they say, you know, a stylish man, a designer doesn't make us.
A
Do you know what I mean? So.
Oh, yeah. That's a sick one. Should we name the episode that, Rash? But yeah, Mike, thanks so much for coming.
Well, pleasure. Thank you.
And this episode will definitely come out.
Yeah.
The reason I said that is because imagine when we first started, we recorded with Mike, just speaking about his journey, his life and that, but we basically messed up one of the angles. So we only had one angle for the episode, so we had to scrap it. But finally, like a year later, maybe even 2 years later, it's been a while now, Mike's actually come on and we've had a great conversation. Thank you for listening. You know where to find us, WMTV_LDN. And also, obviously, you've seen this new type of like opinions-based conversations we've been having. If you have an idea of something you want us to talk about, let me know. DM us, DM my personal JT_WMTV. And also, if you want to talk about something and want to come on the podcast, let us know as well, man. We're open to having discussions with people as long as you got something proper to say. But yeah, as I always say, keep it locked. Thank you for watching another episode of Where's My Podcast. If you ever want to take in future episodes on the go, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Whilst you're there, please leave us a 5-star review. It would really help. And also, don't forget to follow us on our Instagram, WMTV_LDN, to keep up to date with the latest goings on in UK fashion. Keep it locked.